Hey everybody, it's Vern again. I'm doing this video for Sam, the mountain man. He wrote me and commented on my last videos, and he said he wanted to talk about debt. So he asked me if I would, and I said, yeah, sure. The debt situation in America and in the world basically is a big problem. Globally, there's about $250 trillion worth of debt. And just to give you perspective, a trillion is 1,000 billions. So, and globally, when you add up everything, when you add up all the derivatives, all the pensions, the unfunded liabilities, everything, you're looking at about 2 quadrillion worth of debt and liabilities and obligations across the world. And none of it's going to be paid. We'll just have to get that straight. And how do we get to that point? Well, we came off gold. The dollar used to be backed by gold in 1971. And when Nixon took us off the gold standard, that gave the government the opportunity to just create currency out of thin air and run up as much debt as possible. We saw interest rates flying up all the way into the 80s, up to about maybe 18-19%. And then they've come down over the years. And as the interest rates come down, we bottomed out at zero. After the crisis in 2008, the Federal Reserve took the Fed funds rate down to zero, and it stayed there for too long. And the system basically became dependent on cheap money so that corporations can buy their own stocks, investors can borrow money and invest in the stock market, and you could basically just goose up your books just by running up debt. No real profits being made. You can use that debt to pay your capital expenditure. And individuals, consumers, we got into student loan debt. I think it's like 1.5 trillion right now in the country. And then you've got record household debt, record credit cards, mortgages, auto loans, and defaults and bankruptcies will be increasing. They already are starting to increase, and they're going to continue to do that. And the reason is because we know that the system is broken because the Federal Reserve cannot get the interest rates up to normal levels, like maybe 5, 6, 7%. And as soon as the interest rates got up to about 2.5, then the system started to break because there's so much debt that they don't need high interest rates. They can't afford it. They can't afford to pay or service that debt. And so they need those rates lower so that we can continue to goose the system with borrowed money. So everything is based on debt. The GDP, any growth that you might see, it's all debt based, and that's why the system is breaking. And then on top of that, you have a lot of countries that are moving away from US debt because of this, and they see the writing on the wall. The Fed is going to lower interest rates. The rates, they've stopped hiking. The rates are coming down. The lower end of the yield curve is starting to flatten. And pretty soon we're going to be back to zero, and we might go negative like in Europe. And negative interest rates don't do anything to help the situation. So if you have too much debt in your system, you've got problems because you just simply can't get those rates up. And if you get them up to normal levels, you start to break the system. Ludwig von Mises said that there are 2 ways that a credit expansion or a debt expansion is going to end. Either you're going to continue to push up the rates and then crash the system, or you're going to lower the rates, which will create more currency, and then you destroy the currency that's involved. And that's where we're headed. You realize that when you borrow money, the money is not just sitting in the bank waiting for you. It's created when you sign that promissory note, and that's how money is expanded out into the system. The government does it, the banks do it. In fact, most of the money creation comes from the banks, and that's what happens. And the thing about debt to me is debt is okay. I'm going to borrow a small amount of money to help me move to Phoenix. I mean, we're talking about less than $10,000, but I don't even want to borrow that, but I think I might have to. But the thing is, let's say you want to borrow $1,000 and you have nothing. You're at zero on your ledger. You want $1,000, and somebody says, sure, I'll give you $1,000 at 10% interest. So when you pay them back, you got to pay them $1,100. So you pay them back, but then now you're in the hole minus $100 because you didn't have that when you borrowed. And so now you're negative. And so now you got to borrow again. And it continues on. I learned a valuable lesson about debt when I got caught up with check cashing places years ago. I had loans, payday loans out to 2 or 3 different places, and I was using one to pay the other one. And it finally caught up with me. I kept going further into the hole. And that's what happens with debt. Now, if you use debt to invest, like let's say you borrow some money and then you go buy some gold, then you pay off that debt when it goes up, or you pay it, that's where you're using debt as leverage to help you invest into something or buying stocks or something like this. And that's the smart way to do it. But most consumers, they treat debt as money, like free money that they have that they can go out and spend. But you don't realize that you're going into that hole when you do it. So you got to be very careful. I don't like debt-based systems. I don't like fiat, where they create currency out of nowhere. And I think that's why we're in trouble and why the world's in a lot of trouble. And that's why everyone's going back to gold. Look for that to happen. By the end of this month, there's a thing called Basel, the central bank of the world, the Bank of International Settlements, has this thing called the Basel Rules, because it's in Basel, Switzerland. And they set the tone for what banks need to have as far as assets to maintain their stability and liquidity. And they are now going back to gold. And they're saying that at the end of this month, gold is going to be considered what they call a tier 1 asset, meaning it is risk-free, and the banks will be able to liquidate that at 100% of its value in the market. So they want these systemically important financial institutions to hold gold. And with them holding all that gold, you're going to see the price of gold go up, because there's also manipulation in the gold market with gold contracts and paper gold that's not real. And you might have one person, you might have 1 ounce, and you might have 400 people holding contracts claiming that same ounce. Of course, when 1 or 2 people say, hey, can I go and get that ounce, it's not going to be there for them. So that's how the system is, but it's breaking down. The Basel rules are going to require them to hold physical gold and not ETFs and derivatives. So the price should go up pretty good this year with gold. That's why I buy it, and I recommend that for people, silver, gold, and gold mining stocks, if you can get those too. So that's it. Debt's bad news. It's the system's breaking because of it. There's no way it's all going to be paid back. You can forget that. And the best thing for you to do is get some gold and shore yourself up with that, and you'll be fine. You'll be more than fine, actually. So that's it. Thanks a lot, folks. And Sam the Mountain Man, thanks for asking about that. I was glad to talk about it. Y'all take care.